pull yourself together and think about it. Why do you turn a blind eye to this land and what this nation does? Why do you regard this nation differently? Why wouldn't you embrace everyone, every nation, just as human in the first place? We may have different language, religion, color, and race, but can't we love each other just because we are human? We set off this humanity journey in 1920 with the values that make us who we are. Our objective is not only fulfill the dreams of a nation about health. We couldn't have just turned our head and ignored the problems and screams for help of all mankind related to health. We couldn't have turned our head and ignored the injured toddlers who lost their parents in the earthquake disaster in Somalia. How could we have turned a deaf ear to their scream in agony? Had we turned a deaf ear, could we have ever landed the first relief plane in Somalia? Would you know that the people of this nation couldn't sleep happily when their neighbors are starving? Then how can this nation ignore the Syrian refugee mother struggling to make her baby sleep unfed? How can we be not moved by the baby island's scream to survive? If we turned our head and ignored, would the Syrian toddler ever say, because didn't being a Turk mean to be fair, just, merciful, and compassionate for him? Isn't it us who embraced those knocking our door and shared bread and food with them? How can we turn our head and ignore Palestine and Gaza? How can we not feel bad when a child is left an orphan or a mother loses a child? Isn't it us who race with each other to serve mankind? How could we have turned a blind eye to the Japanese confined in Iran? How could we have not gone and picked them up? How could we have turned a blind eye to the flood that took place in Pakistan in August 2010? How could we have remained unresponsive? Isn't it us who end each prayer by saying, "O God, endow well-being, serenity, peace, and goodness to our country and nation and whole people in the world"? When we open our hands and pray to God, standing out against those saying, "Is the prosthetic foot of the Pakistani boy your business?" Who crossed the border and jumped into the battle bravely, with eyes closed, risking his life with this power of faith, in order to pick up every wounded person, friend or foe whatsoever. Now, how could we turn a blind eye to the retired, peasant, servant, elderly, orphan, and widow in this nation? How could we deprive them of our love, compassion, and sympathy? How could we put up with the earthquake disaster on October 23? And how can't we embrace little Azra, who survived the disaster after being trapped under the rubble for 47 hours? Isn't it only us in the world who say the upper hand, the giving hand, is better than lower hand, the receiving one? Aren't these the attributes that make us who we are? Do you now understand why we shipped 32 tons of medication and medical equipment, 388 tons of food, 2,000 tents and 72 tons of water to the suffering people in Benghazi, Libya? How much longer can you ignore the human tragedy going on in Syria? Numbers don't matter, but how can't we share the fatherly affection and motherly compassion with the people hitting 3 million who fled the war and left their homes and countries and came to our door? We couldn't have just turned our head and turned a blind eye to the tsunami disaster in Japan. We couldn't have turned a deaf ear to 13-year-old Asami's scream for help. The very first plane that landed to Haiti was perhaps the plane of Turkish Airlines. The public of Haiti. Probably they cannot even locate Turkey on a map. The victims of earthquake met the warmth, affection, and compassion of Turkish nation on that day for the very first time. Now sort yourself out and think once more. Who would have held your hand on this humanity journey and opened his door had we not set off 92 years ago?